Thank you so much, Julia and Brett, for joining us on a podcast on Dawdle.live. It's always a pleasure to host industry leaders like you guys and take a few insights which can help a lot of audience from across the globe. As we always begin, if you could take a few minutes of time and could give an introduction about yourself, your journey so far, so that our audience have a context.
Julia can start, I guess.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm Julia Michelin. I'm the founder and CEO of Dental AI Technologies. I am a dentist and I am into the AI field, into dentistry with dental AI technology, and we are doing Noma Dental and Luma Brush as well.
And I'm a futurist, which you probably can guess by the sign behind. I run a couple of podcasts right now, one in the fintech arena called Breaking Banks, and the Futurist podcast, which is the #1 future-focused podcast globally. My background is as a technologist. I've had a couple of startups of my own. I'm currently advising the team at Dental AI Technologies and working in an executive role, helping them get that kicked off. And looking at some other next generation technologies related, in the health tech sphere, in next generation financial services and, elements like that. But I'm also an author. My 8th book, which is called Branch Tomorrow, is coming out in mid-September. So that's focused on the banking sector.
That's superb. So let's start with the first question that I have, and it's a very interesting one, is to Julia, because Julia is the founder of Dental AI. Tell us about what specific challenges in access to dental care and accurate diagnosis did you aim to solve with this, and how is AI helping to address that?
Yeah, so I have been working different healthcare systems. So this is why I realized that we have this huge problem into the oral health. And we have like 500,000, it's 3.5 billion people with no access to dental care. So that's like basically half of the planet. And because of my different background into dentistry and different healthcare, I realized that it's like more like a global issue, and we have this like everywhere that need to be solved. So this is where we start Dental AI Technology to put technology into dentistry to fix and to improve accessibility in dentistry.
Got it. So tell us about how this product functions. Like, how can consumers benefit from this product?
So we basically have Noma Dental already live. So nomadental.ai is a platform basically focused on digital nomads, expats, but basically people that are getting mobile and are getting connected and want to get access to more easily technology to like find a dentist and trustful dentist. So we are focusing at big areas like Thailand and Brazil that have really good healthcare systems. And it's like more affordable compared to like other countries. So we are like focused on dental tourists with Noma Dental. And now we're going to launch in September Luma Brush as well. So Luma Brush, it's a device. It's a electric toothbrush with one intra-oral camera. Yeah, where you can basically see what's happening inside your mouth and receive like feedbacks about. So we are basically training this model to detect decay and tartar, early decays of the decay and tartar. So you can have basically access to this dentist, like AI dentist, whatever you are. So you can prevent.
So the main technology there, Rishikesh, just to emphasize, is the AI detection of cavities and caries, gum disease, tartar buildup, and so forth. Essentially, we're looking to get the same type of accuracy in detection of these problems as a dentist would when they look in your mouth at a dental clinic. So we are approaching that right now in terms of the accuracy level. We think that's achievable. So everybody at home will be able to have access to a smart toothbrush with the camera, as Julia said, which will be able to detect, common problems. The main, I think, apart from accessibility, as Julia said, the 3.5 billion people that don't have access to basic dental care. The other element of this is that most people wait until they have a pain in their tooth before they go to the dentist. But if it's got to that point where pain is in the tooth, it's already too late. There's already been considerable damage done to the tooth, and maybe you'll be able to get a filling, but it could be that you require a root canal or extraction of the tooth and an implant. So we're trying to prevent that from happening by using AI detection as early as possible, so that you'll know that, oh, I've got an emerging problem or a future problem potentially with my tooth. If I don't get it fixed today, then it could be much more expensive and much more painful in the future.
Yeah. And Brett and Julia, I've also read in a lot of, ancient texts, and even, a lot of the things inside Ayurveda also talks about a lot of the problems that happens in your gut, in your heart. Your heart health is very much related to your oral health.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah,
Julia,
so
you've got
basically
some insights on that, right?
it's like, yeah, it's basically everything's connected, right? So we have this whole body, and some people think, oh, because the tooth is separate, but it's not. Everything's connected. So inside the tooth, we have nerves, we have like the pulp as well. So it's like the vascular side that it is connected with your heart, because everything is connected. So everything starts small, everything starts like with small signs, and with this intra-oral camera, with really high quality image, you can see like at the same quality, basically the dentist looking at your mouth. So this is the important part. It's like you be more aware of what's happening in your own health, and understand that dental problems is related to your general health. And it is possible, a lot of things is possible to prevent, but you need to get some like attentions. And for example, we with this intraoral camera connect with your brush, you basically scan like your own mouth like once a week, and then you are going to prevent like fillings or root canals or even implants, or even like heart disease. And you have like you go levels. And so this is the basic, the focus is to prevent. It's a different aspect when you use dentistry to treat a disease. So you are basically using to prevent oral health care.
yeah. And it seems to be a very interesting thing for all the dentists across the globe, because I think, are you looking to partner with them? Do you partner with them? In
Yeah.
terms, yeah.
I mean, one of the great things about this is it's sort of like an ecosystem that we're creating. So not only do we diagnose conditions, but then we can send you to a dentist to get that addressed and give the dentist immediate information in, what we call a treatment plan. So they can assess that. But that's also part of our business model, because we have referral mechanics from the dentist. So while in a medical setting, you may have, for example, fitness devices or health devices that you use today, and there may be the threat that if you use these devices, you won't need to go to the doctor as much. But for us, obviously, you can't treat your own, tooth conditions at home. You're going to need to see a clinician. So, we just get you into the dental clinics earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also improves the productivity of the dentist, because there's a lot of times I see 20-30% of the patients, they take an appointment, nothing is there, and they just come out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they have all that information beforehand. They're armed, so they know exactly what the patient's coming in for. And, the patient has some expectations around that then as well. The dentist may find other problems, of course, when a person goes into the clinic, but we can, if there's a clear problem with a cavity, for example, rather than having to go in first for a checkup and they go, oh, you have a cavity, you need a filling, we need to book you another appointment for that. You can go in and get that addressed straight away.
So it
Yeah. So
basically
what is
reduces the cost
happening?
of healthcare. Yeah, Julia.
Exactly. Basically, what's happening right now is like in a lot of cases, it's like you detect something, so you feel like pain, or you have a lack, or like, because ideally we need to go to a dentist twice a year. So every 6 months for just checkups and just cleaning. But we know that's not the reality of like a lot of people. So it's basically what's happening. It's like you have like a pain, you feel like something is not right, but you cannot see, so you don't really know what's happening. And then you just leave it because probably you have like a trauma of dentists, or you don't have like, you are a fear of the price, something like this. It's always like this, right? You have the fear for the dentist, and then we have the fear for the price of the dentist as well. So you just like, okay, I'm not going now. I'm gonna wait till to see if it's gonna getting better, but normally it's not gonna get better. Normally it's getting worse. Then you like when it's you don't we have a lot of pain, and then you go to the dentist, and then we go to the dentist, and then we see that you need to treat and not prevent. And then it's the part that's gonna be expensive, and it's gonna be like traumatic in a lot of ways. What we want is like prevent all of this, and then send you to the dentist or give you the recommendation that you need to go to a
Yeah.
dentist. This is important.
It's still going to be the patient's choice. Yeah.
Yeah,
Individual's
because
choice.
what we do with the AI or model training, it's a recommendation, right? So we detect that we have early symptoms of decay and tartar, and we recommend if you need a dentist. And that's the part that it's really important, because you receive this recommendation before you get something that need to be treated and be more invasive treatments. So that's our goal.
And what I feel is that it will also make the entire dentist ecosystem more accountable. This is one thing, is because it will also lead to less wrong treatments maybe. And the second
Well,
thing,
yeah. I think there's that element of the fact that you do have some dentists that will be say, oh, well, you need this or you need that, and it's more a revenue based decision than a health based decision.
Dentistry is inconsistent in
Yeah.
a lot of places, right? So it's like you use AI to make dentistry more consistent.
and the second thing is what I'm also seeing is that dentists should also develop trust on your tool, because a lot of the times what I see is that when a patient goes to a doctor and the patient tells that, you know what, this was a tool that I used and I thought that, this is what maybe I may be facing. I'm not talking about this dentist, exactly, but maybe about different tools. And the doctor goes on to say that, no, 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 you don't believe on all these things. I will do your checkup again. I will again find out. So that trust thing has to be developed. So how are you, kind of talking to the dentist, trying to make sure that the data on which you are training on is aligned with what are the best practices like, if you could shed some light on that.
Yeah, so basically with Noma Dental, we have a lot of partners around the world, and it's really important, the trust part for us. So of course we check the backgrounds and we recommend the best dentists, whatever like you are basically. And this is really important because especially for digital nomads or travels expats, you're new into the country, or it's not the country where are you from, so you don't really know where to go. You want to go to a trustful dentist, right? I even have case of friends who went to like fake dentists, and this is really because they were in a new country and they didn't receive any recommendation. So that's
I didn't even know there was such a thing as fake dentists
yeah,
before she
I
told me.
know.
It's there, Brett. It's there.
It's there. Yeah, and imagine if you have fear to go to a dentist, imagine going to a fake dentist. So it's
Yeah,
like
that's crazy.
that's like nightmare.
In a lot of villages in India, you will find 40 to 50% people saying they are doctors, but they're not actually doctors. They have done some courses which may be related to nursing or something, and they are calling themselves to a doctor, and people are taking their medicines.
Yeah, that's
so scary.
that's the thing. Yeah,
But I
so
think
the
AI's got an opportunity to really reshape this for sure.
Absolutely. Now, the next question, Julia, is like, who are your competitors? Like, are there products similar to this in the market? And what are your USPs like if they are there?
So for the moment, we have like some companies focusing AI in dentistry, like a lot of companies, but they focus basically inside dental practice. So basically, they give assistance for X-rays analysis, or even like help with insurance and optimization into dental practice. But mainly of them focus inside the dental practice to help the dentist. So our goal is with Noma Dental is focus on the patient, focus on the consumer, so they can have more freedom and more knowledge, even like to know what's happening inside their own mouth. So in terms of AI in dentistry, we have a lot of competitors, and this is great because a lot of things are happening inside dentistry, and I'm really excited for this technology inside dentistry. But for another side, I think we are in the kind of blue ocean in terms of like possibilities, and like focus on like putting AI and technology for the consumer.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Julia, what's your background like? Our audience will also want to know about your background and how did you come to this kind of a product?
So I did dentistry at the University of São Paulo. So that's where I start. So I did a lot of general dentistry in Brazil. I did a lot of root canals. Yeah, I did basically everything like in terms of general practice in Brazil. And then I have experience as well in Ireland. So I work in Dublin. So I saw the healthcare there. I work like inside dental practice. I even assist the dentist. So I have the background of being a dentist, but the background of like assisting the dentist, working like reception and like helping with management and all this area as well. So give me a really full experience of a dental practice. And then I have experience as well in Australia. So I work in Sydney as well to assist patients and to like help inside the dental practice as well. And then I have experience in Thailand. So I live in Bangkok. So I live in really different healthcare systems. And I think this is one of the reasons that give me a really complete idea of like oral health care, because it's really different in so many ways. Like, for example, in Brazil, we have so many dentists, so many dental schools, so many dental practice. But if you go in a place like Ireland, we have just 2 dental schools there. So it's like to get one appointment with a dentist, sometimes it's like 1 year. And it's like, yeah, it's a long time to find a dentist. And like, it's really different. Then Australia as well, it's a different system. But everywhere I went, inconsistency in dentistry was still there. And it's still like dentistry is expensive, people having like fear of going to the dentist. And this happens when we have this big gap between the technology that it is already there. So we see a lot of areas like banking and like so many areas, even like AI itself, with like LLMs and all this image recognition, deep learning being like doing amazing things. But when you look at dentistry, we don't see all this technology that is available there. So that's why we figured out the gap and we say, let's work on this and let's make it work.
Deadly combo actually, Julia, because you come from a similar background, so you understand the pain points pretty well.
Sorry.
I will kind of take you back to Mobin.
Yes.
Mobin was the company which you founded.
Yeah, the
And
first digital neobank in the world.
yes, and it kind of introduced financial wellness as a core banking value. So, tell our audience a bit about what were the customer pain points you were solving for that.
So again, similar sort of issue where the technology as it becomes available allows you to solve day-to-day problems that were unsolvable in the traditional banking industry back in those days. Of course, things have changed very significantly now. Even just looking at the UPI layer and Paytm and other players like that, and the payments license banks and things like that. We have a lot of changes happening there. But back in 2010, when we started moving, you couldn't even get your bank balance in real time. I mean, some mobile apps and things were starting to do that, but the focus of most of the banks at the time was on just pushing you the product or the standard internet banking capabilities onto the phone. So think of it as taking the internet banking interface that you have and shrinking it down to the smaller screen. That was what the efforts were at that point. But we realized the phone was a behavioral tool in that it could integrate into your life in a different way. And so we enabled people to manage their financial health, in a engaging sort of gamified manner. So for example, you would go into a Starbucks coffee shop, you tap with your phone to pay, you would get a receipt instantly on your phone that would tell you how much you've already spent on coffee this month, right? And people would be surprised. Imagine, getting into a Uber or a taxi, and seeing you've already spent 300 US dollars on taxis this month or something. That changes people's behavior quite rapidly. And this is what we're trying to do, raise awareness so that it would change their daily, money habits and behaviors and make them financially healthier. Because if you could stop people spending money, then they saved more money. And over a long term, they were healthier with this. Of course, the other elements that we worked on was things like contextualization of credit, understanding that most people don't budget. They have very most only about 15% of the population is capable of being disciplined enough to set a budget and stick to it. So again, using the type of Fitbit, wellness tools that we have now, we find that behavioral change is more impactful. And that's the same principles we're using here for Luma Brush, is how do we create healthy behaviors that give you more control over your own oral health? A lot of those principles of gamification are the same in what we had back in Movin when we started in 2010.
Absolutely. That is there. And I've got a question on this is that if you see most of the banking, systems, banks, they operate on an outdated core systems.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of the key problems facing the banking sector, historically, in terms of legacy technology debt, and it's even more of a serious problem right now with emerging artificial intelligence and quantum impact on the sector, because, those traditional core systems won't be able to support those changes. So in many cases, when we're talking about this autonomous finance infrastructure and, sort of generative finance, AI assisted finance, a lot of banks are going to find integration with these new technologies quite difficult based on their legacy stacks, which is why you see all of the fastest growing financial institutions in the world today are fintechs and technology companies, not traditional banks. So, Nubank, now the largest bank outside of Asia, 120 million customers, based in Brazil, where Julia is today, it's one of the fastest growing banks in the world, in the top two, actually. WeBank is the fastest growing, based out of Shenzhen in China, 400 million customers over the last 10 years. If you think about that, those two banks are great examples, is their technical agility has given them the ability to scale up acquisition of customers digitally in a way you couldn't do with traditional banks and branches. And I do know from my work, even with the work I've done recently on Branch Tomorrow, is India is the only G20 economy in the world where branches have still increased over the last few years in terms of branch numbers. Everywhere else in the world, branches are declining in utilization because mobile is essentially replaced most of the functionality of branch for most customers on a day-to-day basis. So this shows that India more broadly as a banking sector is a little bit behind on adaptation compared with other markets, because they're still very focused on, signing the piece of paper and getting people into a physical location. But if you look at a market like Brazil or China, most of the growth that's come in banking over the last 10 years has come from digital, not from traditional metrics. So banks can't compete on those traditional basis for much longer. In fact, depending on which market you're in, you're already seeing these new digital entrants taking significant market share. Nubank is the second largest listed corporation in Brazil today. And that's because they've taken so much market share from traditional banks who haven't been able to shift off their traditional products, traditional technologies, and sort of their branch-based approach. So that's the big glaring warning message for the banks in India, is that they may think that, they have some protection because of the regulation and things like that, but things can change pretty quickly.
Right. And you are absolutely right when you say that, because, and I will tell you a bit about my experience. So I was kind of, I was the regional head of a very big bank inside India, like I think 8, 9 years back. And there's too much, friction while I was trying to establish a cash acceptor machine within that branch, like because that cashier, I wanted to remove him at any cost of my operations, kind of.
Yeah.
So that problem is there. And plus the other problem is that 70% of Indians, if you see, prefer going to the banks. There's a trust deficit. So it's a big trust deficit market is what I've felt inside.
This is really interesting because, we saw this this is what people will often say is, well, people prefer to deal with a human. But it's really interesting to look at trust metrics specifically when you look in the Chinese market, because the Chinese market, if you went to the Chinese market in 2012, you would have heard exactly the same thing. that people trust the bank and they trust people that they can see, and if there's a problem, they know they can go and yell at someone to get it fixed,
I
right?
think everyone who already went to a bank to deal with something knows that it's not like this.
Yeah.
Normally, we don't want to go to a bank
Yeah.
to stay in the
Yeah.
queue, and then it's not a good experience.
Yeah. The point is the data shows us today that people actually trust Alipay, and players like Paytm, even though there's been some recent changes with Paytm, obviously in India, more than traditional banks because of the utility that they provide. So when you can do things very quickly for a customer and solve their problem, whether you can help them solve it themselves on their phone, then actually this produces a much higher level of trust than what we traditionally experienced in a customer-facing environment in a branch. So this is how digital's already reshaping trust in banking.
Absolutely. Now, Brett, I would like to talk a bit about longevity alpha as well, which you
Okay,
founded. You were
we can
working on
talk
it.
about longevity.
Yeah. And you were working on a digital twin for health management. So, what are the gaps in preventive healthcare or personal healthcare tracking where you're trying to solve with this approach?
Well, I think Julia will have some comments on this as well. I'm sure is that, but essentially the way we are looking at healthcare evolving moving forward, healthcare 3.0 and 4.0. As the industry sort of talks about this is, right now we're trying to improve diagnostics capabilities and things like that to show when you have a specific medical condition or an emerging disease and try and get to that as quickly as possible using this next generation of technologies. But when we start talking about longevity, it's got to be more than just addressing a problem as it emerges or quickly. It's about preventing those problems from occurring at the start. So this is where if you have sort of a longevity scoring system, which looks at your cellular health, the health of your mitochondria, your gut biome functionality, your variability in your blood work, all of those things, if we can get a digital twin model of that, then we can see where your body is getting out of alignment and where it's likely to produce issues in the future. And paired with things like genetics analysis and things like that, we then can start to build a model of how your health will evolve in the future. So we really starting to get into the age or the possibility of prevention of diseases and complications. For example, if someone has a predisposition towards Alzheimer's or breast cancer or one of these conditions, in the future, we'll be able to tweak your genes so that you won't have that genetic disposition. We'll be able to make the protein switches. But at the same time, what we'll be able to do is look at any other environmental or, systemic issues that might lead to that complication in the future and attack those issues as sort of inputs into the system. So longevity alpha is really built around this sort of concept of trying to create a bioage score and, get all of those over the space of about 14 different categories of biomarkers and look at essentially optimizing each of those biomarkers in those specific categories to ensure your longer term health.
Yeah, absolutely. And just out of curiosity, a lot of things have been done in the mental health space as well, like because, a lot of these non-communicable diseases, these lifestyle diseases these days are coming out of the stressful lifestyle which a person is having or the way people are less happy. Do you find any, AI-led solution which has made a mark in this space?
So I think there's a number of things happening in terms of mental health that are pretty interesting right now. In terms of things like PTSD and depression, we are seeing that psychedelic components, are having real impact. This is interesting because sort of a brain chemistry reset to some extent. And we've been using plant medicine for the last, 4,000 years of human existence in various
Yes.
guises. So it was really in the 1970s that the US sort of started this big war on drugs, and that sort of changed research into in terms of these psychoactive compounds that could have been for assistance in mental health issues. Now we're starting to see some of that brought back in. Also, there has been some really interesting progress made with augmented reality technologies in treating PTSD as well. So we do have some tools available for this. I think overall, in terms of mental health and well-being, again, on the therapy side of things, AI, semantic conversational AI like ChatGPT and so forth, just the most recent research over the last couple of months has shown significant benefits from even having therapy sessions with your AI. So there's a whole set of new technologies that are coming about. We are going to have so much in terms of brain chemistry and applications of this. Of course, even in the future, we may look at integrating technology into the brain, such as brain computer interfaces like Neuralink and things like that to enhance our own intelligence. So there's a lot of potential emerging in this area.
I think the whole concept of even AI neural network is really relate with the way we think and the way our brain process, right? And nowadays we have been troubles with lifestyle and with work-life balance, and all this stuff. One reason is because of the system that we live. I think a lot of people are getting more flexibility and being more philosophical about their own life. And when they're doing something and that lost some meaning, and so I think we are getting to the next generation is looking for something that's bring more meaningful. And of course that's a lot of impact of internet and the technology as well, but I think lifestyle, and we are definitely going to phase where the system is changing the system, right? So it's a lot of impact on health.
Yeah, social
Mental health.
media has not been particularly
Yeah,
good for mental
absolutely.
health,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
there is a concern about AI, particularly for our youth, younger people, as they start interacting with AI, their AI friend is going to be like their best friend that they have,
Yes.
right? Because it'll be able to mold itself to their personality and so forth. That's not necessarily a healthy situation to be in because we still
Yes.
need social interactions. You don't need just friends who tell you just
Yes.
what you want to hear
Exactly
all of
what you
the
want to
time.
hear. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So there is there's some potential issues there, and then also there's going to be actually the fastest growing job category in the world over the next 10 years is going to be essentially therapists assisting humans because of the displacement that's going to happen, in work and employment with technology and things like that as well. So we're going to have a real reliance on better mental health treatment through this transition because we have this sort of exponential technology curve right now with all of these technologies taking off with so many possibilities, but humans don't adapt exponentially. We adapt in a linear fashion. So this means that we're going to have a lot of people displaced by the tech, and it's going to create a lot of need for more mental health care and things like that. But this is where Julia's point about this is sort of a systemic change that's occurring. Do we introduce universal basic income for large scale technology unemployment? Is there different jobs that we can train people to do that are differentiated from AI? If we had 20 or 30 years to discuss this and debate this and make these changes, then it would probably be much more straightforward. This could happen in the space of 5 to 7 years that we have to make significant changes in the system. So the system itself, the system of capitalism and governance as we have it today is going to be under extreme pressure because of these accelerated technology changes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Julia, would also like to take you back to that dental AI thing. Is that what's your revenue model like? And, if you could talk a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So we basically use in a field of deep learning. So we use image recognition. So basically we train a model with a big data set of photos of decay, intra-oral photos of decay and tartar. So we basically give this learning model to the model, and then reinforcing learning. And then with this big database, and because we use the intraoral photo, it's a really high quality photo as well. So help us to train the model and improve the accuracy as well.
And what's your revenue model like? How do you earn money? from the dentist or from the, from the customers?
So we basically had the referral system. Because we send people to the dentist, we receive like referral based on this.
Got it.
And then with the Luma Brush as well. So we are going to launch in September. So we're going to bring revenue from this as well.
Great. Now, Brett, my last question to you on this podcast. Can you tell us a bit about, when an organization, thinks of a business problem which is existing and which they are looking to solve with the help of technology interventions, what should be the ideal approach like? Maybe in terms of identifying the outcomes or the problems and what pitfalls they should avoid in order to make sure that the buying that they have done or the implementation that have done doesn't fail.
So, I talk about this extensively. I talk about, Bank 5.0, sort of AI-based banking, and that the two things you need is technical agility and cultural agility. And both of those tend to be significant impediments to adaptation. Because, if the technology is not right, people go, well, the core system won't let us do that. It'll take years for us to design a work around that, and that immediately becomes a constraint. And the other one, cultural, is be like, well, that's not the way we do things here, or the regulator would never let us do that. And so not being able to think outside of the box from a cultural perspective is a massive challenge. Most of the time in banking, and I guess the same would be true of healthcare and dentistry, is because people have learned their profession over decades, their ability to think outside of the box and think of completely new approaches to that is very limited. So we call this, when we're talking about technology adaptation and design, we talk about design by analogy, or we talk about first principles design. So design by analogy means you essentially take a process or a product that you have in the existing model and try and retrofit it onto a new technology that emerges. But first principles thinking is saying, what does the customer or the patient really need in this instance? And if we were to start from scratch today to develop a solution for that, what would that look like? And that first principles design often produces very different results and very different approaches. A good example of that is the iPhone. The iPhone didn't take the Motorola, flip phone, the banana phone, or the BlackBerry with the rim keyboard and iterate on that to make a better version of that. It started with a completely different approach with a touchscreen. And then you also have like SpaceX, right?
Yes.
Reduce the cost of launch vehicles down by 90% because of reusability. Landing rockets on a ship in the ocean. Again, that's a first principle design approach, because if you had asked NASA to design the next generation of spacecraft, they'd be looking for incremental improvements in performance of the engine and lighter materials and things like that, but not that reusability thing. So in banking, as an example, this is what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of the really rapidly emerging, rapidly growing companies in the space have just thought about it very differently. They don't even have the same products that banks have anymore. They do behavioral savings and contextual credit instead of issuing a credit card or a savings account. That's still sort of that core utility of saving or access to credit, but shaped in a very different way. So this requires very agile thinking. So I guess to wrap up, I think that first principles thinking is a real superpower if you can do that. And AI is going to be also a very big part of sort of rethinking, because AI gives you capabilities you just have never had before.
Absolutely. Great, great, great. Julia, thank you for joining us and taking us, through your journey so far. And thanks, Brett, always to have an insightful
Welcome.
discussion. I hope this podcast will basically help a lot of people who are building in the tech space get a few insights. Also, the dentists as well, who want to implement something what Julia is building. Please approach her. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.